Get off.
So this is your second workshop for your budget. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible since the finance committee, budget finance committee, has seen some of this. They haven't seen the work, the slideshow, but you've seen most of the information that's in here. Please stop me if you've got a question. I'm not going to try to race through this because I do not have a whole lot of slides. So what, if you would get to the next one, or not at all?
Nice.
There you go. What I want to do is go through the revenue, a little bit of revenue history and touch on assessed value since we just received the preliminary assessed value of 26. We'll talk about expenses. If you've been around with us at all, you'll understand what we built into the budget, just like we have for the last number of years. Would like to do kind of a fund overview just to kind of look at some of the funds that we have in front of us, and that'll be a separate document. I think you guys have got this by email. If not, obviously I could send it to you. We did look at the departments. We met with the departments. We asked them for their input, met with departments, went through some Q&A with them, just to learn more about what they were looking at and what their requests really centered around. Brought those back to you guys, obviously, in May. And then, of course, utility rates, an ongoing discussion. Seems like it never ends. Utility rates are always adjusting. And then we'll talk about a little bit about next steps. So starting on the revenue piece, there's a lot of numbers on this slide. If I direct you to the first column and the last column, you'll notice that the charges for services, this is citywide. This is everything we do. The biggest number we've got on resources, the charges for services. Mostly that's your utility revenues that's coming in. Overwhelming majority of the revenue to run the city is from that perspective. $11 million in the budget for the charges for services. There's some smaller stuff that's in the general fund and parks and some of the other things, but the overwhelming majority of that is 11 million. Your second biggest is way down. It's the top line, property taxes at 2.2. And then the third one, about halfway down that slide, is around sales tax, $1.8 million. Those are your top three revenue pieces. If you go to the next slide, what you'll see is the general fund. This is all of the revenues for the general fund. So out of that 18 million, we've got 4.3 million that's in the general fund. Drop off the charges for services because they become a really small amount of resources for the general fund. And just as a definition, general fund is there to capture any service that's not allocated into a specific fund. So a lot of times you'll see fire, police, administration, some public works, some parks are in there. So a number of items in there. So here, if you drop out the charges for services, the first one up, going to be property tax, 1.6 million, followed by that sales tax at 1.1 million. At the bottom of that same slide, you can see the property tax growth. The preliminary assessed value we got back from the county is around 6% growth. The last number of years, it's been a lot higher than that. So it's kind of coming down for a landing, I think. Sales tax we've got baked into this one is around 2.5%. This is 2.5% above what our current estimate for 25 would be, not for the budget, not from budget. Because if we went 2.5% from budget, it would be under budgeting, if you will, sales tax. Because we expect to receive more than what we budgeted in sales tax in 2025. And then the transfer in increases, you can see that almost the bottom line, right? The line right above grand total. A lot of that is, well, all of that is the transfers in within the utility funds. And you can see that increases over time, and obviously the increases are dependent on sales, on the utility revenue that comes in and where those utility rates are set. So that really depends in the general fund on what's going on in the utilities. If you go to the next slide, it's going to show assessed valuation. Nope, sorry, that one right there. So that what I did here is just take the top 10. Top 10 revenues make up about 3.8 million. And just like it was on that first slide, obviously the ad valorem property tax is at the very top. The transfers in, you can see the bottom four that are fairly sizable for what the general fund relies on. And the sales tax is broken down into both city and county sales tax. Go ahead and the next one. There's the assessed value. So the assessed value here, that blue line at the top is assessed value growth over that same period of time, 2020 to 2025. You can see the real separation between your state assessed or personal property. It came in around 2022. 22, 23, and 24, 24, 25 are both, yeah, I'm sorry, 23 and 24 are both double digit increase, 14%, 11% in assessed value increases each one of those years. 6% is what we've got back from the county for 2026. Now, as far as new value is concerned, new value really started increasing in 2021. It was around 630,000. This is not NRP. This is just pure new value. Outside of NRP is $630,000 in assessed value for new value in 2021. It went to $1 million in 22, and then $500,000 in 23, and it's kind of coming down a little bit. Another $500,000 in 24. For 26 is half that. It's around $200,000 in new value. So it has fairly substantial increases in new value that adds every single year.
And just to be clear, Ben, when you're talking of these numbers on this new value, that is new houses
New
built in
improvements.
our community.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is not the increase in the
Right, and
budget.
that's real value, real property. So if I bought a piece of land and built a house, that's brand new value. That's what that accounts for. It doesn't account for the new value or the increased assessment on current appraised value.
Does that include NRP or is that just handled separately?
That's handled separately.
New
That's
value,
pure new value, right?
including everything that's in NRP, and that will be for to come back.
Yeah,
That's just the new value.
that's just new value, right? Right, because NRP is handled separate, completely separate from that. It's brought down to a different category.
Right.
So if you go to the next slide, it really shows the public where that mill levy has been. There's a fairly significant drop in 24 down to 25, 43 mills. 26, and I'll show you this in a little bit, but the 26 is really depending on that levy being flat. And that's what we built the budget on, is a flat levy, not an increase in any kind of property tax. You can also see the breakout of that levy where it goes to. The GF is general fund, requested or required, and the final column is the preliminary 2026 values. And you can see those. GO, the general obligation bond and interest, is what that almost the last row stands for, bond and interest. If you go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about expenses and jump right on past it. Obviously, anybody that's been around the city knows that the city is predominantly a service-driven organization. As a service-driven organization, it's all people, right? People and anything that you employ people with, benefits, etc. 60% of your overall general fund is made up of personal services. And the personal services is wages, overtime, FICA, benefits, anything that has to do with employing that individual, and payment and pay. The second thing is really contractual services. Obviously, your management goes into that personal services. That's where you're going to affect your budget the most, through vacancies or through hiring additional people. I know the police department talked about a little bit about compression. We'll get to that in a minute. But each one of those things are obviously a lever that you guys can pull when it comes to your budget. That the little cutout at the bottom shows the split between wages, full part and overtime, and then retirement and insurance. So obviously a bulk of that 2.5 million is going to be wages as overall. Go ahead.
Real quick, Ben, just for clarification, on the personal services through the general fund,
Yep.
is that just for the non-utility personnel, or
Correct.
so their
there's-
percentage of the people that have dual roles is staying in there in that expense fund, in that expense fund,
Yeah.
their personnel?
Yeah, for instance, any kind of city administration would be split out
Right.
amongst different funds. This is only, that would only be that person's percentage that go into that general fund,
It's not all the transfers in, because everything gets paid
no.
out of the general, right? I mean,
right? They get paid
utilities
directly out of the
transfer
general.
their personnel,
Right,
personnel services, and then the general fund pays it.
right.
But we're not counting all that in this.
No.
This is just, okay, thank you.
Just the general funds portion. This slide's new for the budget packet. I thought it'd be fairly useful information because we keep talking about it. General bonds and general leases, these are the two graphs. You can see that the 2015 A's is orange. They'll pay off in 2027, and this is actually support from a number of different funds, but it's paid out of the general bond and interest. There's transfers into this to help pay that off. There's also property tax that pays that off. So 2015 A's are going to pay off first. Really in 2027 will be the last payment, and they'll be here before you know it. 2033, quite a ways down the road, it's going to be your 2013s. So you can see that that overall debt service is a declining balance as it moves forward. So obviously there's some room if there was a capital project that the council wanted to see layered in there. There's something we can do about it. Your leases on the right-hand side are really all your general items, mostly streets, right? Streets, the police department and then fire department are all within this item. PD cars and equipment you're going to see pay off in 2027 because they typically are on a 3-year cycle. So they pay off a lot faster. The one that's going to take a while, obviously, is that ladder truck that extends out a little bit. If you go to the next one, you'll see the electric fund. I've got electric, water, and wastewater in here. The electric, we've already talked about 2026 being the final payment of that 2014. You can see the size of that blue bar. It's fairly significant. So that's going to provide some relief in 2027 when we come to it. Both 2014 and 2015 A's will pay off around 2027. If you go to the right-hand side, the electric fund leases, you've got the digger truck that's going to be in there through 2028 pay off. And then the rest of the biggest portion of that is the diesel generators that we just bought. And
Is it 2023 on the substation? What is it?
yeah, that's right. It is. That's right. It's a substation. When you look at wastewater, water and wastewater, water bonds, there's no leases in the water side. But you see the biggest piece of that is the 2017 water line. This is, I believe, a KDHE loan that comes through the debt fund or the water fund. That's the biggest portion of that. 2021 is a fairly recent bond, obviously the orange part that has a inclining debt service piece.
How does that work? Usually you see flat how does the 2021, why is that increasing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I saw that the other day and I meant to look it up. I'm not sure why. Typically you have a debt service, your principal would increase, but you'd have flat, like you said, flat debt, if not declining debt service. And I know this isn't one that I was involved in. But typically you'd see that decrease instead of increasing. I think that was also issued back when we had the lowest, we had really low interest rates as well. On the right-hand side, the 2015 Bs are going to be the wastewater bonds are the biggest. Now, you got to look at also the scale on the right-hand side or the left-hand side of each one of those. That orange makes it look like it's really big, but it's really maxed out at 350,000. So it's not really the same as if you look at electric bond. On the water bonds, maxing out at 250,000 on the chart.
That wastewater was for the east side sewer interceptor, correct? It was.
Yeah, it is. Can you switch over to the fund pages? The ones that have general fund. Yeah, that one right And I'm saying fund, not fun. I mean, some of us find it fun going through this, but I don't think you guys would be that way. And this is similar to what you've seen in the budget book each year, right? It shows the major category of revenue and expenses. This is just the general fund. At the very top in that block of numbers where it says beginning cash, that's literally what that is. Beginning cash, 129,512 is what our ending cash for 24 was, right? So what we're doing is estimating our 2025 budget as a net deficit. Now understand, this is making an estimate for 25 based on April numbers. There's a lot of year left to go through. The way interest rates are for investments and our sales tax, I don't believe that 20,000 is going to come true. It'll actually be on the positive side, which will help everything really. It'll help both 25 and 26. Anytime we put a budget together, obviously revenues and equal expenses, and with a net surplus of $9,200, we've been able to do that. Baked into this, thank you. Baked into this is a flat levy. We've got 5% increase in COLA and merit together, 5% total baked into this. There are 4 different project equipment pieces in here that's actually funded. The pieces that all 4 of those are funded as part of this. Also built into this is a department request for the line items that didn't go up over $5,000-$10,000. These are things to really adjust based on actual. So if we under budgeted for utility, electric utilities going in the general fund, we needed to bring those back up because we don't have a choice. Those were corrected as part of this too. When you look at the 4 projects underneath, those are all debt financed. They're proposed to be debt financed. You'll see some of the transfer in here, that 34,434 at the very final column. Some of that transfer goes over there to the bond and interest fund to pay those. The financing for that would be put in place in January, so we could go ahead and get the radio, all 7 radios, and the Spring Creek Lake maintenance. What I envision doing, if based on your approval, is going in and contracting with the bank just like we always do. And as we get ready to pull those projects together, you may not be doing Spring Creek Lake maintenance in the middle of winter, maybe the summertime or the spring, but we'll be able to draw that funding down once we have that started. The fire brush truck and chief's vehicles in here as well.
Then I always get confused on beginning cash or ending cash balance for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include, is that cash or does that include investments like CDs? Are those include? So
Yeah.
Is the cash balance the same as reserve?
Yes.
So that
That's
includes
yes,
all.
includes everything. It includes investments and cash, operating cash, both of them together.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Thanks. Not what I wanted to hear, but thanks. I was hoping that was not the case.
I really do hope that this 117,000 is probably a low ball.
Yeah.
For cash, because we've still got. I mean, we've still got what almost 24 months to go.
Yeah, are you forecasting? Are you still sticking to the budget for 25 expense forecast? Or are we looking to?
I'm sticking to the budget for the.
What is we're looking in where we predicted? So
Right.
That's what you're using.
I haven't backed up off on any of that. There's some vacancies that are obviously part of that. That's going to make that expense side look better.
Right.
Obviously, but if anything, knock on wood, I hope this to be a worst case scenario.
Okay.
And as we go through the year and we see those monthly
Yep.
financial pieces, then you'll start seeing forecasts come out of that and those cash numbers changing. Any questions on the general fund? And we can kind of roll past a little bit on this other one. The library fund obviously is a pass through, and it's just a carry forward from the prior year. Go ahead. Cemetery is the same way. Well, no, it's not the same way. It is a property tax supported. Ending cash of 207,000. I'm not sure if we've got the equipment purchases part of that yet in 2025. We have not. Okay, so that'll change. That'll change a little bit. Go ahead. NRP, we can keep going. Go to the electric fund. well, hold on right there. So this is the bond and interest fund. Obviously, you can see property tax supported, but there's also transfers in. Transfers in a number of funds. Quality of Life is paying for the library plus community center, this community center bond issue. But this is all the bonds and capital leases that are not used for any kind of utility. This is all just the general activity, governmental activity of the city. We talked about an electric fund. I'm not going to belabor it here because we still got work to do. We saw it the last time we met. We talked a little bit about the 25%. I think the Budget Finance Committee still got time to meet to talk through more about what this looks like. We have a little bit of time because we're really not, I think it's August that we're aiming for on this one for any kind of decisions for this council to make. So we want to bring that back, obviously, to the Budget and Finance Committee and really kind of ferret it out where we're at. Go ahead. The next one's going to be the water fund. These are the water and wastewater. I'm not concerned about it. We have these, usually take a look at these at the end of the year to see where we're at and see what we really need to be changing any kind of rate fluctuation. 8% in my mind is obviously single digit. It should be lower than that. You also got to keep in mind there's no capital built into that. But the positive thing is the cash reserves are headed up. And you see at the end of 2026 at 277,000 in cash. Obviously, fund balance is 15% is 387,000, but that was a far cry from what it was 2-3 years ago. So that's a positive. As that goes up, it means that Russ and the staff need capital out of that fund. We can start really thinking about what that capital needs to look like, whether it's just repairs we've been waiting on, whatever it might be. We have an ability to use some of that cash as we move forward through 2025 and keep a close eye on it. Wastewater was fixed a number of years ago. We're looking at basically a CPI adjustment at this point in 2026. I say CPI, it's really the municipal cost index that this is hooked to. 3.5% is a little high for that. It's probably around 2% for that municipal cost index, but that's what this is based on. Fund balance 15%, it's 224. We've got nearly that in an estimate. Based on conservatism and 100% expense in 2025, it's going to come in north of that. So the wastewater and the water sometimes have interchangeable projects or expenses that we can use, and since you guys don't, since the city doesn't issue revenue bonds, we're not married to one or the other. If they both benefit, they can both pay for something. Refuse and recycling, that's the one that went up in 2024 based on the external rate increases. And the rest of them I'm going to skip. You go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, and go past that one. And the water. That would keep that one right there. So you've seen this one a little bit. This is the, in every month I give you a 2025 fund health, if you will. So what I did here is do the same thing, only using the 26 budget, and really give you an idea what the total cash would look like through the city at the bottom of that very last column, 5.2 million across the board. With a couple of those funds, there are negative cash balances that we'll have to figure out. Fund 29 or the general CIP is made up of a number of different projects. And the negatives aren't huge, but they're also assumed to be taken care of by the general fund or any kind of surplus cash that might be available. So the biggest piece of this is the community center. Now, that's a little odd, only because there's a piece missing in here, and that's that tax credit and a couple other things that are not built into this. It's one of the reasons I pulled that out and show you. Pool improvements has got a little bit of cash left as well. And as we debt finance anything moving into the future, we're going to want to roll the police building fund into that, and that 367,000 has been around for a while, a number of years. So lease finance or bond finance that piece to get rid of that cost and that negative, so those buildings can go away for the general ledger. Everything else is headed to the right path. It's going the right way. Special highway fund still got 200 and some $1,000 left, as Rob gets a lot of that programmed. I think that might be the end of the slides. Nope, that's the last one. So here we are today, June 24th, workshop number 2. We talked about July 1st, talking about the electric fund, but I think that's a little too early. So we'll probably push that. We've still got lots of time. The next time I get in front of you will be July 15th. That'll be a resolution to exceed the revenue neutral rate. If that's the desire of the council to hold the mill levy flat, that's what we'll need to do. And there's actually a resolution and a form that we've got to send to the county to make that happen. We've always done that here at the city. It's just to reserve our right to go to a certain level. Doesn't mean we're there. Doesn't mean we're going to go there. That's not the night we decide what that budget looks like. This is only to decide what we're going to send to the county, and that's it. So July 20th, we got to turn, I say we, Russ has got to turn that intent document into the county. And we'll set a public hearing on August 5th. The public hearing would be September 16th. Not in here is a meeting to talk about electric. I haven't put that in here and forecasted that because I think we probably ought to run through the finance committee to make that happen. Within the second PDF that you also have, the very last page is the CIP. We do have a CIP, and what's important in that CIP is the out year projects. Marked in that same book, you'll see what's budgeted within the funds that I just showed you. There's a number of projects that are budgeted there. You've seen a lot of this come through previously. I'm not going to belabor it because you guys can read it. But everything that's in that CIP that's marked either operating or lease is within those numbers that I showed you. So with that, Mayor, I don't have anything else.
Any questions for Ben?
Just confirm on the electric fund, you use the rates changes that you've identified here to get to the cash.
Yep.
In cash reserves.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome. I do have to put a plug in for the finance committee. It's been good to work with those guys, only because you're probably one of the elected bodies that has a finance committee like that, but not just that, but you guys get into the details.
You don't act like you appreciate it.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure
It's not 7:30 in the morning right now either.
Yeah.
But hey, we appreciate that, and it's good. I mean, it's good discussion.
Yeah,
I
I think
we
so
have
too.
very good discussion from both ends of the spectrum,
Yeah, absolutely.
which
Yeah.
is helpful.
Thank you for always being patient and
Yeah.
explaining everything, sometimes 5 times.
And Matt's not ran away yet. We haven't chased him off as I had last time. He's been assigned to another client, but he'll be back.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Is there any staff that'd like to add anything, discuss anything regarding around the budget? Any further council discussion?
No, I just think we have some work to do on, figuring out where we want to end up on the cash balance. I think, as always, the fund reserve conversation needs to continue. Reach fund, and I think we had some good discussion in the finance committee meeting around what those reserves should be used for, and there's a couple of things that we need to probably approach them differently than just having cash in the bank. And I think one thing, just so you're all thinking about it, and I don't know if Jeff, you relay that on, but just to get you thinking about, the discussion we had was the reserve is an insurance policy to mitigate a forecast that didn't come true, right? If your forecast was wrong, which it always is, just you have the reserve to say, well, if we spent more than we planned, we have a reserve to pull from because we can't go negative, right? So it's always that, just to buffer yourself against your forecast revenue and expenses. The other thing is an insurance policy against disaster, right? That's the big one. Everybody says you have to have 6 months, and if your electric utility gets wiped out, you're not generating any revenue because you're not sending any, not charging anybody for any electricity. So, we got to talking about that. Well, okay, so we have 3, 4, 5, 6 months worth of cash built up, and we need to go stand up all new poles and transformers. Well, my understanding is the lead time for those, it doesn't matter how much money you have. You're going to be sitting waiting for the supply chain. So it's not necessarily, in my mind, how much cash you're sitting on. It's how much cash you're sitting on to pay wages, because you need to make sure everybody's paid. So that's, and debt. So those have to be covered. But what we talked about, what like everybody started thinking about, is there's maybe a different way to handle the risk. We probably need to start building up some actual inventory on things that we may need to get that have long lead times. So your reserve would be lower on the end of the year, but you also got this fund in the utilities that you're building up and actually spending to land transformers and sit on them. So that, I think the departments need to come forward with what they think would make sense. We certainly don't want to be sitting on a full city build out of everything, but if we had to rely on, if things are 3-month lead time, how much do we need of transformers to go replace them, or poles, or whatever it is, just to start building up a reserve on the disaster part, and just leave the reserve, the fund reserve, the cash balance for salary and benefits and debt, so we keep paying our employees because we don't have the revenue come in. So I think that was a great conversation we had. It's a different way to look at it, and it would mean you still have to go buy that stuff. You're not getting away with not having a reserve. You're just actually spending it and having it on hand for when you need it. So just something I thought was very helpful for me. Have you all thinking about, have the utilities, directors come forward, be thinking about it, say, well, this is what I think we need to have, and just start having that discussion. And as we build budgets, then that becomes another line item we have to pay for somehow, but it's built in there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did I cover what we covered?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'll add, I think, I know it's more of a strategic planning conversation, but since, but there's a little bit of a budget piece to it as well. But the more you bury, whether it be one at a time as you maintain them, the less exposure you have for that reserve. And I know from a budget standpoint, it's relevant because I know that we punted on that boring machine, but maybe that's something to consider as we going forward. The more you put underground, the less exposure you have for a disaster, and the less you don't need poles.
Yep.
Just throwing that in there.
Pat, thoughts on that?
That's what I was gonna say. Well, then.
That's I don't want to get in the weeds about it, but
I
we understand. We've talked about it being a big bonded project, or the ability to do it one at a time. So if something goes down and the landscape, it makes sense and we can do it, we have the machinery to do it. That's more what I'm referring to than I am a whole bonded.
I think what we kind of talked about in committee, Pat, just to put some perspective on it, because we know how much this is going to cost. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we talked about is, do we start setting aside $100,000 per year, and however much that can get us underground, at least that's kind of moving the needle into that direction. I know it's not a lot by any means, but that's, correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of where the discussion started, just a sliver out of our budget to start putting stuff underground.
And the only reason I brought it up was because when we did our initial strategic planning, I think that was number 3 on everyone's list. Everyone kind of had Christmas in their eyes on that idea. So I'm just keeping it up there.
Oh, we know. We've seen it in the electric budget.
Oh yeah.
Any other comments? All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Work session's over.